podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. Today, I'm coming back home to Monroe County to talk about the workings of local government at the county level. Few can better speak to these matters than Julie Thomas, who has served in county government since 2009. She is currently completing her fourth-year term as one of 3 members on the Monroe County Board of Commissioners and running for a 4th. According to the biography on her website, Julie has been a county resident for more than 30 years. She has served the community as a volunteer and board member for a number of local social service agencies, including Planned Parenthood, Middle Way House, Indiana Equality, Hoosier Hills Food Bank, and WFHB Community Radio. She completed her 5th degree, a PhD in Russian history and gender studies at IU Bloomington. Julie teaches part-time and has provided virtual and in-class instruction for more than 25 years at IU, Franklin College, Southern New Hampshire University, and IUPUI. We'll discuss the roles of the County Council and the Board of Commissioners and what those jobs entail. We'll dive into the challenges of navigating the COVID pandemic and shepherding federal investment money into transformative local projects. Finally, we talk about a couple of the most contentious issues in Monroe County government: building a new jail and the city of Bloomington attempting to annex large swaths of land. First, I could really use your help. My family suffered a tragic loss earlier this year, and my entire perspective on life changed. I used to be content as a handyman contractor. I could put on my headphones and tune out. The money was okay, and there wasn't much stress. But now that I've known real grief, all of that seems meaningless. And I feel called to make Indiana a better place with less grief, especially the kind inflicted by our lawmakers. So I've been devoting myself to the HoosLeft project. My work is dedicated to calling out the Republican supermajority, their financial backers, and others in their network that actively work to make Hoosier lives worse. Those whose policies endanger children through lax gun regulation, bullying of LGBTQ youth, and environmental degradation. I work to highlight these bad actors so we can replace them with more empathetic leadership, and also shine the spotlight on the Hoosier activists, organizations, and elected officials who are doing the hard work to build a more just, equitable, and compassionate Indiana for the next generation of Hoosiers. But I can't do this without you. Perhaps my decision to pursue this full-time was irresponsible, but I feel compelled, almost supernaturally, to keep going. Still, all the passion and conviction in the world doesn't pay the ever-mounting bill. I rely on your financial support from paid subscriptions over at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. For $5 a month or only $50 a year, you can help me push our state in a better direction and help my family in the process. And even if a paid subscription doesn't work for you at this time, you can still help. Subscribe to the free level over on Substack. Set your favorite podcast player to auto-download new episodes of the show. Rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you use. Follow me on social media at facebook.com/HoosLeft. That's HOOSLEFT. I'm also on Blue Sky at the same handle. I'm personally at ScottRog78. That's SCOTTROG78 on Instagram, Threads, and the platform I refuse to call anything other than Twitter. I'm also on Mastodon at ScottRog78 at Hoosier.social. I'm now posting video, too. Full episodes on YouTube and clips on TikTok. The handle on both of those is at HoosLeft. But most importantly, pass on the word. Forward the newsletter to 10 people, or you'll be cursed for 7 years. Don't just like, but share on social media. Throw leaflets from a plane. With your investment, a full-time HoosLeft looks like new content every day. It looks like full coverage of the 2024 election cycle in Indiana and beyond. And it looks like zooming out to see how the malevolent forces at work in our state function nationally and even globally. Again, it might not be financially prudent, but I do not plan on paywalling any content because I believe in open access to information, and your support helps make that content freely available to all Hoosiers. But I am running out of funds, and I need your investment in order to do this full time. To those who have contributed already, thank you. I appreciate every penny. It means the world to me. And to everybody, thanks for listening. Now here's my interview with Julie Thomas. Julie Thomas, thank you for joining the Who's Left podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
So you are one of 3 Monroe County commissioners currently. You've held that office since 2013. That was after the 2012 election, correct?
That's correct.
And then before that, you were on the county council for 1 term?
I was. It was a great experience.
So for our listeners who maybe don't understand all of the goings-on the local government level, because that stuff does not get nearly enough attention. You know, the news always talks about the national stuff, and maybe you get some state-level stuff out of the Indianapolis news. But, boy, you know, with local journalism being in the state it's kind of hard to find out what's going on in county government. So just what do county councilors and county commissioners do?
It's a great question. I'm so glad you asked, because you're right. There are a lot of folks who don't know how county government is structured. And it's structured in such a way that we have to collaborate with one another. We have to work together. And I think it slows things down a bit, but I think it benefits the residents a lot. So we have a lot of elected department heads. The city has a lot of appointed department heads, but we have a lot of elected department heads like assessor and treasurer and surveyor and those kinds of jobs. But the council is in charge of the finances. They are in charge of determining salaries for most positions. Some are structured by state statute and the state sets those salaries, but they maintain the budget and determine bonds and taxing fees, things like that. The commissioners are the legislative and executive branch of county government. So we have ordinances to pass relating to planning and zoning, street signs, everything in between. But also we do manage some of the county's departments as well. And we do have to process claims and payroll every time we meet. But it's a really busy job, and it's an incredibly interesting job. It's not always glamorous, but it is always interesting. I like to say that about it. But we don't get, the press coverage that a mayor gets. And even though residents of the city are residents of Monroe County, and city residents everywhere need to remember that they do have a county government. They elect representatives every time that there's an election. They have the opportunity to elect representatives to their county government, and they should take advantage of that and be aware of some of the key issues.
Yeah, for example, I mean, I myself here am outside of city limits, so county government is my government, right? So we'll talk a little bit, rewind. Let's go all the way back to like 2009 through 12 and talk about your time first on the council.
Right. I think I learned, for me, it was a learning experience about how county government works, how the departments function, how they function together, and the budget process, and how incredibly tight the budgets are every year. It wasn't just a fluke that they were tight when I was there. There was a recession, of course, but Yeah, it was a great learning experience, and it was really a great opportunity to really start connecting with county residents in a way I hadn't before. And then I've carried that forward in a different capacity. But some of the early relationships I established, 2009, 2010, 11 are still active and useful today. So it's that part of it was great for me.
So can you explain the way this works? Like there's three commissioners and there's, District 1 and 2 and 3 and residency requirement, like, each commissioner has to reside in their own specific district, but then on election day the whole county votes for all the positions. Is that the way that works?
Yes, it is. It's like the school board elections, right? You have to live in a particular district, and I think that this was established this way to ensure that there's geographical diversity in the commissioner's office. It doesn't mean I feel like I represent the entire county. When I ran for council, I ran at large, so it was also the whole county. So I think that's an important part of it.
So tell us a little bit about your time um, as a commissioner. What are some of the highlights, big issues you've had to tackle during your time there?
Great question. I will just pick a few because I feel like I could go back and really start listing a lot of really big projects that we worked on over the years, and I've had different colleagues throughout that time, and we always worked together and figured things out. But we did build the employee parking garage, and that was really important for our employees to have a safe place to park downtown by the buildings that they work in. And right when I was still on the council, we started moving forward on a huge solar project that encompassed downtown, the North Showers building. We also I worked on that when I was on the council, the actual purchase of the building. So that was kind of fun to see that transition. But so that's been a great project. When we heard from township trustees about concerns with their budget relating to fire and fire protection, they asked us to look at doing a fire protection district. Now, in other counties, the county commissioners went in and said, hey, you are now in a fire protection district, which is a separately governed tax unit. But we didn't want to do that because we really wanted to know, what do the residents think? Because it's a different tax. Their township tax will go down, but they're going to be taxed for fire protection. Is this what they want? And so we required each township to hold hearings. So I was at a lot of meetings for a couple of years, just listening to residents. And so they were concerned about their budgets, their ability to provide fire protection for each township, because each was doing their own fire protection. And rather than doing what other counties had done, which was just magically waving a wand as commissioners and determining that the folks in the county are now in a fire district, we actually required each township to have financials drawn up for how it will impact residents, and then to hold hearings. And if there were any remonstrances, we would hold a public hearing at the courthouse as well. And so we went to a lot of meetings over a couple of years. But it was great because I met new folks, and we got to talk a lot about fire protection. And so it was really useful, and we ended up with a pretty large fire protection district. And so that was a great benefit and outcome. And again, that's something we could have done in 10 minutes at a meeting, but I don't think I would have felt right about that.
Right. So, does that lead to like decreased response times or like increased coverage area? What are the effects of these changes you made?
Yeah, so the impact is better coverage because you're not relying on mutual aid agreements between townships. Everybody's dispatched out together
Mm.
if need be, and so the response time is better. It they are I loved those volunteer firefighters. They were great, but now we actually have firefighters on staff um, who who this is their profession. So I think the service is even better than it was before. And again, can't thank those volunteers enough because they really carried their communities through a lot.
Absolutely.
But it's different when you have professional staff. So that's been a great outcome. And once we received some American Rescue Plan Act dollars, we utilize that to help our fire district buy ambulances. And so we're going to have better ambulance service in the community because of it. Hopefully they'll start rolling in the next month or so.
Yeah, and I'd like to dig in to all the American Rescue Plan funding and all the things that you've got um, to do with that. Now how you've acted as a steward for that money, and we can swing back around to that because that's kind of more recent. But let's talk about what else um, you've come across in your time as a county commissioner.
I would say probably looking back, even back to 2013, I would say my proudest accomplishment is the way that we worked through the COVID crisis. This was a time when we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how to protect our own selves and our own families. And here we were tasked with trying to keep county government functioning and keep people going and keep businesses open and keep residents with a roof over their heads. And there was so much that we had to do. It was nonstop work. I remember I would get texts from people and they would say things like, "Oh, I'm baking bread," or "I cleaned out a closet." I was like, "Oh, I wish I could do that." Yeah, but we were really literally working
Yeah,
7 days a week, many hours a day to make this happen, to help protect our residents. And anytime we wanted to open a testing site, we'd have to investigate and work with the state. And then when the vaccines came, I became a medical reserve corps volunteer, so I could help with the vaccine distribution. I mean, there was so much to do, but I think for me, getting our employees through, getting our small businesses through, getting our residents through was super important. And we used CARES Act money, and we used that to provide grants rather than loans, as the city did, to small businesses, a couple of social service agencies. And we made sure that residents, through their township trustees, and thank goodness for our township trustees, they helped administer CARES funding for residents in need, people who are struggling to pay a bill, a utility bill, rent, anything because of COVID. So that money went to great use and it really helped keep people going. We helped some catering companies and a dog walking service and all kinds of photographers and all kinds of folks outside the city who were at risk of losing their businesses because of COVID, because of the decreased demand. But you have to remember how uncertain those times were,
yeah,
because we look back at it, we remember sort of the end of it or when things kind of realigned. But there were runs on stores and who's an essential worker and who can. There were a lot of questions, and of course there was a lot of grief in our community. Um, but we have great staff at the county, and they really, especially our technical services department, made sure everybody had laptops, and we got on Zoom and we just kept going. But I think one of the many calls that were difficult for me was at one point I did have to connect between the airport manager and our coroner because we
no,
didn't know
oh,
what was going to happen. I mean, we were seeing the news stories of semi truck trailers parked in New York City. I mean, was that going to be our fate? And this is very early on, but I had to make sure that we had a hangar available to park a truck if we had that many cadavers.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do. Sorry, as a county commissioner, that's a hard thing to have to make a call about, because these are our friends and neighbors, and I'd rather protect them than to figure out a way to manage cadavers. So it was a tough time.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. And it's kind of stuff that flies under the radar and people don't think about, that just makes our community run even under the most trying circumstances.
Yeah. And I will say that one of the things we did is we ended up having a once weekly press conference for folks who were really concerned about what was going on in the community regarding testing and vaccines, and when are they coming, and how are we going to mandate masks or not, and how are we going to keep people safe in restaurants and bars, because this is a college town.
Yeah.
So we ended up having a weekly press conference, and that was really useful. But during the week, we had regular meetings with the city, the hospital, our public health department, our legal staff, and we met multiple times a week to work through potential problems and find solutions as quickly as we could together. We made sure that we hired security, not to give people tickets for not wearing a mask, but to ensure that bars and restaurants found the best way to keep patrons safe. If they were open, how could they do it? How could they, form a line here? No wait, no table service, whatever it might be. So, safety glass, all of that stuff. So, there were a lot of little details, but also a lot of big things. We got a lot of grief for the mask mandate, but we also heard from scientists who said you really need to do this, and we did.
And I believe like COVID spread rates and case numbers and deaths per capita in Monroe County were a lot better than in a lot of other parts of the state.
I believe so, and I'm glad of that, but I'm sad for the other counties.
Yeah, it stinks for them, and you got to think that has a lot to do with politics, and that's just really, really unfortunate that health becomes politicized. So besides COVID, which that's a hopefully once in a lifetime kind of occasion, what else are your big highlights from your term so far?
I also think, especially more recently, the American Rescue Plan Act allocations, that's kind of related to COVID, but
well, sure,
everything's related to COVID now.
Into that, because that's, again, that's another one of those, once in a lifetime kind of opportunities to get all this federal funding pumped into the community. And I imagine everybody wants peace, and it's got to be difficult to decide where that stuff goes responsibly. So what have we done with those ARPA funds?
Yeah. Well, I won't go into the nitty-gritty of dollar amounts, but I will say that we have done a lot to support the provision of childcare. We have done a great deal to support the provision of housing and shelter. We have a huge grant that went to Beacon for their new projects, so that's exciting. We're working on a second Habitat for Humanity project. The first one we helped with infrastructure at Osage Place. And the ones that I have been most involved with were probably Osage Place. And, the fun part is you get to go, and I went out and volunteered without build. It was really neat. So, there's a lot of that happens too. So we did fund a lot of food programming because this has been an ongoing need in our community. Hoosier Hills Food Bank started Fresh Food Fridays during COVID. And a couple of us were out there every Friday in the hot, hot sun and the cold, cold winter, putting groceries in people's trunks on Fridays. Now, last summer it was once a month they did it. So, but I've been volunteering there ever since. Not as much as I'd like to, but some, and it's been really eye opening when you see retired veterans in line with their grandchild in the car, trying to get food for themselves and a neighbor, and you see families who are really struggling to make ends meet. It's very eye opening. So we did some of the food security issues. The ambulances for the fire protection district, and rural housing repairs one I'm really proud of. I kind of worked on this one a lot, and the idea is that, we talk about housing and affordability, but there are a lot of people who are on a fixed income in their homes who are struggling to make basic repairs, like a roof repair or a floor or an HVAC or something like that. And, they can now apply, medium and low income folks who are living in their homes, their own homes, homeowners who are living in their homes. So this excludes landlords. Outside the city can apply for a grant for a basic repair to get done. And one of the most touching stories, and we took this story to Washington, D.C. We were invited by the White House to attend a Illinois and Indiana summit on what we did with ARPA money. So that was great.
Fantastic.
But we heard about a widow in her 80s whose heating system went out, and she was basically had a heating pad on her bed, and that was her heat.
Oh my!
And it was getting into winter. It was, I think, November. But using ARPA money and the rural housing repair, she got a brand new HVAC system installed in her house. And that is so heartwarming, because you don't want people to be displaced from their homes, and you want to allow people to age in place gracefully. And so that was a really good thing. So we also did a lot of paving projects and that kind of infrastructure thing that is, once in a generation opportunity to get things done. We paved more than 50 miles of road for the first time ever in Monroe County, which is a lot. And we also have a $1.1 million solar project going in as we speak at the remainder of our county buildings. So those are not just solar panels, but you'll notice that North Showers building, that parking lot that we have there, there's going to be some covered parking. It's going to look a lot like what the city has on the south side of Showers. We're going to do batteries, and we're going to do plug-in stations there, and then all over our highway garage area, and then adding some more to our parking garage on Morton. So we're going to be able to change our fleet over, because we're going to have that infrastructure to hybrid and all electric, which would be great.
That's neat stuff. And it sounds like perhaps up front, that could be, a big investment. And, obviously we're getting some federal money for it, but I think down the line, that stuff's going to save the county money, right? Because
absolutely,
it's going to reduce electric bills, if we're able to generate our own electricity, you're not paying for gas if you're using electric vehicles. So not just
and better for the environment we all live in.
Well, obviously, yeah, that.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be able to say, oh, that is also fiscally responsible.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
On environmental matters, if I recall, from an event we attended a couple weeks ago, one of the things you're really proud of is that your work on protecting the Lake Monroe watershed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we actually had to file suit with the National Forest Service to prevent them from clear cutting thousands of acres that adjoin Lake Monroe. They're not in Monroe County, those acreage, but it's in Jackson County.
Mm.
But it would impact us because not only were they going to clear cut and burn, they were also planning on laying down, I don't know how many gallons of glyphosate, which is Roundup.
Oh, yeah.
And all of that goes into our lake. And we know there are health risks with glyphosate, although federally that hasn't been recognized, but we certainly know there are lawsuits out there about glyphosate
Yes, there
and the
are.
impact on people's health. And the last thing we need is to lose our sole drinking water supply for not just this county, but also surrounding counties because the Forest Service decided to drop glyphosate.
That's wow, that's scary, and it makes you wonder about, like what else goes into our water supply, or if they're doing this in around other
It's
bodies of water, and other communities are stuck with a contaminated water supply. It's scary stuff.
absolutely.
So let's shift to your current campaign, kind of the current goings on in Monroe County, and the handful of kind of big projects that are on the table and are sort of the point of contention in county government. Um, we're trying to build a new jail. I understand. There are disagreements over where to put it, whether it should be moved at all, whether it should stay downtown. So, if you would maybe summarize where we stand on that, and then where you come down particularly.
Yeah, no, it's a huge question for a lot of folks. And I was probably the last person in county government to move off the fact that we can't remodel the current jail to make it work. I was dragging my heels as much as I could, but I have come to understand that there's no way, sadly, that we can accommodate the programming we need and have a constitutional, humane jail. And we were required to have a jail, so let's not even go on that question. I would love a world where we didn't need them and we didn't have them,
Sure.
but we don't live there. And I wish we did. And I'd like to get us close to that as possible by providing programming so people don't ever even get involved in the criminal justice system at all. But we're not there yet, but we're going to get there if I can help it. But we have one of the things that happened is we had an initial meeting with our contractor, designer, engineer firm DLZ, and we said, look, give us a list of all these possible locations where we could have a jail, and tell us the pros and cons, and let's make a list. And we worked with the council on this as well, because obviously they have to fund it. We have to build it. They have to fund it. The sheriff has to use it. The judges have to use it. We have to work together. This is one of those quirks of the way county government set up. And, and we looked at, hey, we've got property downtown across the street from the convention center. It is not big enough. We cannot have a multi-floor jail. It's a security risk. It's a very expensive facility to maintain. We have a multi-floor jail now. It's horrible. We cannot do this again. Nobody does multi-floor jails. This is just, we don't do that. So that space is too small for a jail. Okay. So we had conversations with the city about the Hopewell property. It wouldn't be co-located, but Hopewell would be close to downtown, and it's kind of an apt name for this. But the city was far along in their development plans. They have a plan for housing. I get it. They weren't interested. Okay. So then we went to Fullerton Pike on the very south side of the very edge of the city on the south. So it's Fullerton Pike and 69 because there's some property available there. We could make it work. There were some problems with, there were some issues with the land, but we'd work around them and it might work out well. Took it to the city and they said no, because it's zoned as an employment area and moving employment is not new employment. They want new employment there. So we were told no. Then we looked at Thompson. Now, Thompson is owned by the county, huge, acreage there, Rogers and Patterson area.
Then this is the old RCA complex, correct?
That's it. Yes. So we really started looking at that. Now, one of the things we did is we had some neighborhood meetings. This is in Broadview neighborhood. And so we had neighborhood meetings and people were really worried and upset and concerned. And probably one of the most salient issues that was raised related to traffic, because none of those streets in that area are really built for a high traffic area, especially if you co-locate all of your justice services and the jail. That's 400 some people going to work. And that's plus your other traffic. So that's a lot. And so that was concerning. Where on the site was a concern. Well, then we started looking into it and we found out we would have to move a lot of dirt, acres by 50 feet tall out of that area. We don't know what's under it. Plus some power lines have to be moved. Yeah. And some power lines have to be moved. And that would take Duke at least 2 years to do.
There's a substation now right by there, right? Yeah.
Yes. So now we're at that point where it's not only going to be like expensive, $1 million plus, to do all these things, but now you can't build while they're doing any of that. You can't move the dirt until the power lines are done, and then you've got to move the dirt, and then you find out what's under it. There's a human cost to waiting here. There really is. And sometimes you have to take good instead of perfect. So we're turning our attention now to North Park. North Park is on the northeast corner of State Road 46 and I-69. And North Park is it's not developed. It's ready to be developed. It has, which is great, it has a packaged sewer plant already. So it has sewer access. And, this is good. It's right near a highway. It's close to the hospital. There are a lot of things that are really good about North Park. It's not in the city. That's not good. It's near the city. It's right outside the city. So there are concerns about transportation, and I think this is one of those things that we can overcome. We can make sure that people have access. But if we have to operate our own shuttle service, then we'll figure out how to do it. But I actually think that we could work with Bloomington Transit, do a park and ride facility to help them out, but then also get them out there. They have contracts with apartments, to provide service. So we could just become a contract for them. However we have to do it, we will figure it out. We're not planning on not doing transit. We will figure something out that is convenient and timely and frequent. So we'll work on that. We'll get there.
Yeah, when you talk about transit, like to and from this, so is this for inmates, employees? Is there like a parole and substance treatment sort of component here? Like what's
what we're really talking about? Yeah, it could be employees who are coming to work. Typically it would not be inmates, but we may have to work through an Uber Lyft service for release times and things like that, which we could do, and get folks to services. If they need to go to Beacon right after, we can get them to Beacon. That's not expensive. That's doable. But it's a lot of it's people who need to use the courts for, a proceeding, a small claims, a divorce, a criminal trial, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that people can get access to the courts. Now, if you live in the county, you have to figure out how to get access to the courts in the city anyway.
Sure.
But we're doing it kind of the other way. But I think it's totally doable. I think the cost savings of this new facility, because it will save us money with the additional space and the appropriate layout. It will take less staff to manage it and run it, even with programming added in. I think we could figure out the transit thing. We recognize it's an issue. We recognize it's vital. Absolutely. Right now, the sheriff does not do in-person visits. I don't know if he plans to. If he does, we'll figure that out. It'll happen if this is the choice. And again, we're investigating because we have to do geotechnical surveys.
Mm-hmm.
Those are getting ordered. We're waiting on some appraisals. So we have a few more steps before we get to that point where we say this is the site. But it's taken a lot to get here. But the methodical way we've approached it, I think, has been very appropriate. We've looked at the city. We've tried a few things. We've done our due diligence. We've done our research, and we really feel at this point that waiting is a bad idea for Thompson to become viable. And I think that North Park looks really good. It looks really good. I've always kind of liked the North Park site because it is pretty much open land, and it's not going to be right up against an existing, dense neighborhood.
Yeah, and the rest of the commissioners kind of on board, thinking along the same lines you are here.
Yeah. We issued a statement about that a few weeks ago, just to be clear, just to make sure the council knew where we were at. That we'd really like to move forward with North Park at this point for investigation, and let's see what pans. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but you can't investigate everything all at once. You really do have to do it step by step. And to me, this is a really good site because it is so darn close to the city, and it does provide all those other things we're looking for: highway access and a really good roadway. I mean, it's 4-lane roadway each, on 46 and on, Hunter Valley, formerly Curry, and then I-69's right there, and the hospitals across the highway and down, the bypass a bit. It really checks off a lot of those boxes.
And either way, it looks like we're a ways before any shovels go in the ground.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Not that far, but certainly it wouldn't be until 2025, because if the site is ideal, then they start the design work pretty quickly, and then we move forward at that point. But so it'd probably be, if all goes well, which you never know, it might. If all goes well, we could be spring, summer 2025 starting to build.
Okay, so that's only a year
Yeah.
after this.
That's
no
that's
time
aggressive.
at all.
Possible. Yes. I know. In county time, that's quick.
Yeah. Well, then the other big county city kind of co-venture is the convention center. And my understanding is that we've sort of outgrown our current space. Is that what's going on?
Yes. So our convention center, it's Monroe County's convention center in the city of Bloomington, is getting request after request for much bigger meetings than it can hold because the hall space is limited. We have property down there. The city now has property down there. This is a co-venture. It was difficult because it started just before COVID, when we started talking about how are we going to do this? How are we going to build? Who decides what? And then COVID obviously was by far the most important thing to it. Nobody's going to have a convention until we deal with COVID.
Right.
So that put things on hold for a bit. And I will say that there was a bit of, back and forth about who decides what and who makes this decision. And it really slowed things down way more than it should have. But I will say with this new administration in the city, we've really just gone leaps and bounds forward. We have a capital improvement board in place, which we had actually done last year. That they've been functioning, and they are busy folks who have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. And boy, are they getting a lot done. So things are moving ahead very quickly, and I'm really grateful for their work because this is not a not a paid position. So grateful for the folks in our community willing to do this. And we're down to one memorandum of understanding, and boy, that seemed to hold things up quite a bit. Not a vital thing at that moment. So there, the CIB was still meeting. They didn't stop working, but we just had to hammer out one last detail. And guess what? It's done. After January, it got done. So we're. I don't think we have much more to do with this until the city comes back with their proposal for how much they want to bond in order to pay for the convention center based on the food and beverage tax. And when they do that, the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission will hear it and make a decision. There are restaurateurs on the board, a member of the commissioners, a member of the county council, city council, mayor, and then some restaurateurs who make that decision. So I don't think it's going to be a lot of hand wringing for that one, but we have to go through the motions and the formality of it all.
And this is purely an expansion we're dealing with, or are we rebuilding a whole new facility, or what's in the works?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, we actually put some ARPA money into the convention center too, because it needed a few things upgraded badly. So we put in more than $1 million into updating the convention center a bit just to get them through until the renovation and expansion takes place. It will be expanded, it will be renovated, it will look brand spanking new. There will probably be a hotel or two added downtown as well. But there's lots of space. They could go north, they could go east. They have space either direction, which is really nice. I mean, it's pretty unusual, but I think just we've been thinking ahead all this time, and when those lots came available, the county made sure that we bought them.
Okay. So, and just for everybody, why is it so important that we expand this convention center? This, I assume, is going to bring lots of economic activity to the community, potentially.
Yes, and here again, I was also probably one of the last to the bandwagon of let's expand the convention center, because my feeling was initially, let me explain how I got to where I am today. I'm a bit protean about these things, but initially I thought, well, these are a bunch of service jobs, and that's not great economic development. So where's the economic development? And we've got businesses downtown, they will benefit, bars and restaurants, but then a developer came in and bought a bunch of them up, and now they're under one restaurant group. So really, it's not a lot of people who are going to be benefiting. It's a few people who are going to be benefiting. And yeah, there were some questions, clearly, but I've also had the opportunity to look at some of the ways that small businesses in our community really benefit when there is a more active convention center. Everything from catering and photography to hairdressers and you name it. It is pretty amazing the reach that a convention center has into really bolstering small businesses in our community, and really they're the lifeblood of our country and our community. So I'm all for that. So I'm on board, and even if I wasn't, I'm outvoted, and that's okay. So let's make it the darn best thing we can.
Absolutely. So, speaking of things expanding, like the convention center, the city itself was also looking to expand through annexation. For the record, I would have been affected by that. I am outside of city limits and in one of the annexation areas. don't have a dog in the fight either way.
Well, you
But
would.
but you and Penny Githens were vehemently anti-annexation. Do you want to explain that position and why it would have been bad for county residents, you think?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I went into this a bit torn because when it was first announced in 2017, by the way, we got it by a fax. How many things are sent by fax even in 2017? But that's how we received the annexation information. So we got the fax during our meeting, during our commissioners meeting, but it was I wasn't sure because if the city residents really want it, and the county residents don't, then what should I do as a commissioner? Because they're all county residents, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you take a side? And I really was planning on just seeing what we had to, see. What is the fiscal impact going to be on the county? Because there will be one. Local income tax probably being the biggest part of it. So if you live in the city, if you're a city resident, your income tax dollars go to the city. If you live outside the city, they go to the county. If you live in Ellisville, they go to Ellisville. So this was important fiscally. But as we're investigating this, I heard from so many residents of the county, including people in the city, who did not want this annexation to happen. People who were concerned about police protection already being compromised after COVID, getting enough officers and, sidewalks that have been planned not being done within the city already. So how can they promise services outside the city? And the other thing is, this is a huge amount of land and turf that the city wanted to annex. It was going to increase the size of the city by more than 50%, I believe. It's a staggering amount. It's a staggering amount of land. And so I was voicing those concerns, trying to talk to the mayor and city council, and trying to get this, stopped or pared down, or something had to give. And clearly that would have had a huge impact on the county's bottom line. So much of what the county does impacts residents wherever they live. We still have to collect the taxes. We still have to survey. There are things that we do, assessor, treasurer, auditor, commissioners, council. There are things we do for the whole county. So how are we going to provide the same service people are used to with less money? That's going to be a problem. We had, again, found out that there was a financial plan done as per state statute by the city. But looking at it, we thought, is this true? Is this accurate? So we hired, with the help of the council, we hired a financial firm to look at the impact of annexation. And we found that the impact on individual residents was pretty severe. And so we got that information out there. We held a number of listening sessions, provided the data, a different version of financial data on what is the impact of annexation going to be. And it comes down to that, once again, that human cost. Individuals who are on a fixed income who could not afford to add city taxes into what they already owe for their other taxes, and they're on a fixed income. They can't just magic up extra money. And for a lot of residents, this was going to be, 40 to 70% increase in their property tax bill. That can be impactful. So we provided folks with that data. We in fact put something on our website so they could enter their information from their current tax bill and see what their new tax bill might be. So they would have a better sense, an informed idea about what the cost of this would be. They would get things like trash service, but is it worth that money? They would get, what else would they get? And so we really are focused on trying to make sure that people are aware and educated about these things. I joined the board of directors of CRAE, which is County Residents Against Annexation. And as a 501c3, we're not political. Our goal is educating people to make sure they knew how to do a remonstrance petition and what the costs were first. And then we got through that process, and now it's in the courts. So we have all been deposed, and we're going to court. And we're going to do everything we can to try to protect the residents of Monroe County. There's a cost for city residents to annexation. It's not free. It is not free. There is going to be a huge amount of bonding that would have had to happen to pay for additional services. And, one of the American Rescue Plan Act projects we're working on right now, it's a new one, and it's a sort of a public-private cooperative effort between a developer and Habitat for Humanity. And we said, hey, there's 70 plus units here. We're going to need sewer service, and it's outside the city. We're going to need sewer service. And we were told, we're still looking into this, but we were told we don't have sewer capacity. So how would they have sewer capacity for all of these other places that they were trying to annex? And so we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know in my particular case, we are on city water. And so we there was a clause when we bought the house, if the city ever does annex, like, you're already getting the city's services, so you can't fight it, which, again, we knew that going in. And the thing that really bothered me about it is that the state didn't let us just deal with it locally here. And the Republicans at the State House said, no, Bloomington, you cannot do this. Okay, if Bloomington doesn't want to do this, we don't want to do this. Fine, but that shouldn't be their call.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think what the legislature did was, and it was eventually struck down by the courts because the legislature put this into a budget bill. It was, it was not suave and smoothly done. It was kind of ham-handed, and it was not done artfully. And certainly, I've run into other things where the state's trying to control what happens locally, and I find all of it difficult to deal with. But I think there's only 3 states in the country that allow involuntary annexation, which is what this was. And I really would like instead for the legislature just to make it voluntary, because folks can pick then, instead of the other way around where they have to fight. They can actually join willingly or not be part of it, rather than having to fight and feel like they're being attacked. I think there's just it's just a bad feeling to have to fight somebody who's trying to annex you.
Sure. So, as we work our way toward the end of our time here, I want to talk about just the uniparty situation we have here in Monroe County. Like, pretty much every elected official we have is a Democrat. So any differences on things like annexation or where the jail should be put or the convention center, those are all like intra-party squabbles, and they're not everybody is on board with the same thing, right? So you've got a primary opponent coming up here in May. What differentiates you from Pete Iverson, and why should the people of Monroe County send you back to the county commissioner's office instead of bringing in the new guy?
I'm just going to talk about me because that's what I know best. And but I am I see myself as a public servant. And again, this is a job that you can't prepare for, but boy, once you're in it, you either love it or hate it. And I love this job. It's really an honor to work for the residents of Monroe County every day. And I would love to keep doing that. And one of the things I have as my tagline is tested, trusted, and a demonstrated commitment to Monroe County. And clearly the tested part has to do with COVID. That's something that, boy, you just don't know what you're dealing with day to day. That was definitely a testing time. But one of the things I would say is if I were done, I would know it and I wouldn't run. There are things we are working on that are exciting. One of the things I pride myself is on innovation. The rural housing repair and the ambulance service, coming up with these programs and seeing them through. We have to get this jail done. And we have a lot of other fish to fry in our community as well, protecting our drinking water supply among them. But the other thing that I've always run on is environmental stewardship. I want to see through this fight with the Hoosier National Forest. I want to protect our lake, and I want to find a way to work with the counties surrounding the lake to bring them all to the table so that we can do a better job. Now, some things are out of our control. This is an Army Corps of Engineers lake. You've got the National Forest Service there. So there are things that we can't control. But perhaps we can do a better job together, taking care of the watershed, which means, what kind of fertilizers are we using, and can we help people get their septics reinstalled, repaired, emptied, whatever they need to help protect our lake as well. So that's part of it too. And I also always talk, and I've done this since I ran for council, I talk about engaging with county residents. And I think back to some of the things that we've been able to do because we listen to residents. We think about Thompson site. That was like, oh, we heard the residents. We know this is a real issue with traffic. There were other issues raised too, but this is a big one in the environment as well. Yep, we heard you. But we can think about ways that we've really adapted, brought in new programs because we listened to residents. So the Fullerton Pike, I fought I-69. Clearly, that was a loss on my books, but with I-69, oh, guess what? Now we have to have Fullerton Pike, and Fullerton Pike actually doesn't it crosses at the highway, and then it's further east. You can find it, but there's no road there. We're going to need a massive bridge and all of this work done. In the process of this, a 5-lane road was proposed. The residents in Bachelor Heights area, Bachelor School area, were so upset because they're not used to having that kind of a roadway. We heard them. That roadway shrunk from 5 lanes to 3 because of them. And then when we actually built the first roundabout in Monroe County there, went back to those residents. We called them back and said, come on and help us design this roundabout. And they did. And they did a great job. Take a look at that roundabout sometime. It's great.
I drive on that roundabout multiple times a day, and it does look very good. I can attest.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And they did a great job. But that's why it's so important to continue to push for engaging county residents. We do office hours every month. We each host 2 office hours every month, so 6 hours for different times of days and different days of the week. And our current push right now is to make sure that everybody who the FCC thinks has internet access and is sufficiently fast joins the broadband challenge up through April 14th. It's a very short time span. Thank you, Indiana, to get people to check the speed of their internet. So you'll be seeing postcards in mailboxes, and we've got press releases out. We're doing everything we can to notify residents, and we're there to help them make sure that they can do this test, the speed test, to make sure that this will work for them. We want to make sure everybody in Monroe County has internet. Now, if you go on the FCC website, we have linked, go to co.monroe.in.us/broadband, and you can find that FCC map. And if you are a red dot, that means that the FCC already knows you don't have internet. You don't have to do a thing. Now the state's going to reverse auction your address off to an internet service provider, and they will be required to provide service within a few years. Now, clearly, that's not very fast for some of us, but it's better than what we have now, which is internet service providers throughout our community who continue to say, no, we're not going to provide that. Nope. We offer money. Nope. We're not going to do it. Now they're going to do it because they're going to get paid to do it. And that's from the federal program, the BEAD program. So this is an important one.
Yeah. I mean, broadband is at this point a necessity. It's almost as much as water or electricity, something you need to have to function in modern society.
Absolutely. It's about education, workplace, social connection, especially for older folks or folks who are disabled or homebound for some reason. It is about that social connection. It is about health appointments and telehealth. It is the electric lines of today. Is get that fiber in there. So let's hope that we have some good participation so we can find out where the FCC is wrong. So only those folks who the FCC thinks has service are going to get that postcard. Everyone else, we already know, and the state knows, and we're good.
Very nice. So, Julie, bring us home here. If the people want to find out more about you or your campaign, how they can donate or volunteer, where should they go?
Best place to get in touch with me is Thomas for Monroe County.org. Thomas for FOR Monroe County.org. All one word. They can also call me. I put my personal cell number out on the county website, and everywhere I go, it's on my walk hard literature. Call me. If you have a question, call me. 812-345-0707.
Very nice. Julie Thomas, thank you so much for joining the Who's Left podcast. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was wonderful. The time went by quick. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Once again, that was Monroe County Commissioner Julie Thomas. Only about a third of Americans follow politics closely, and most of that attention is devoted to the national level. Most of us have no idea how state and local government works, despite the fact we interact with those jurisdictions far more frequently. We give little thought to how they can really affect aspects of our daily lives, from paving roads and improving fire coverage to helping our elderly neighbors age in place with dignity and protecting the quality of our drinking water. We here in Monroe County are fortunate to have a deep pool of motivated, capable public servants that largely agree on the biggest issues. As a largely one-party county, our candidates disagree less on what the goals of local government should be than how to achieve them. Given this, I don't make endorsements in these primary races. Julie Thomas has been a dedicated public servant for 4 terms now, and if she wins in May, citizens of this county will continue to be in good hands. I will continue to effort the other candidates in this race and beyond throughout 2024. Thanks for listening. Again, subscribe at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. Follow me on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, and on most other social media sites at ScottRog78. If you want to reach me, send me a DM on the socials or email me at scottrog78@gmail.com. Until next time, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.